Joining me today, I have the manager of evaluation and shared measurements at End Homelessness Winnipeg, Elijah Osei Yaboa. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
So, recently you met at the University of Winnipeg to talk about ending homelessness. How was that turnout and how did it go?
The event was successful in terms of attendance. Our intention was to release a report that we had been working on for some time now, and this was the 2024 Winnipeg Street Census, also known as the point in time count. The project it's intended to help us count how many people in Winnipeg experience homelessness in a day. It also helps us know what their experiences are and how best to meet their housing needs.
Absolutely. And speaking of some of those statistics, would you mind sharing what you guys found kind of in a nutshell?
Yeah, I'll share the highlights from the reports. One was unfortunately our Indigenous brothers and sisters were vastly overrepresented in homelessness. They constituted 79.9% of the unhoused population. If you break that down, First Nations alone were almost 63%. That would be almost two-thirds of our survey respondents. Métis alone were 15%. But to put these numbers into perspective, based on the most recent national census, Indigenous people constitute only 12.4% of Winnipeg's population. So for the city's entire population, they are about 12.4%. However, when it comes to homelessness, it's as high as almost 80%. That means there's a lot that we need to do to address Indigenous homelessness in our city. We also found that the majority of our survey respondents were from 30 to 49 years, actually more than half of our survey respondents. Youth, we define youth as from 16 to 29 years, and they constituted close to a quarter of our survey respondents. 50 plus were about a quarter, a little over a quarter of our survey respondents. Another major finding was there were major contributors to homelessness here in Winnipeg. One was discharges from hospitals into homelessness. There are a lot of people that are discharged at the hospital, and when they are released, unfortunately, they are released into homelessness. CFS is also a major contributor. We found out from our study that close to a half of the survey respondents had prior experiences with CFS, and typically they stay with CFS and age out at 18. But when they age out, unfortunately, they don't have the supports that they need to be able to find housing and maintain their housing. So they end up experiencing homelessness. Another major contributor is corrections. About 30% of our survey respondents had been incarcerated in the year prior to the survey, and we know jails are the most expensive form of housing. And the federal government estimated that it cost them on average over $300 to incarcerate a man. For a woman, it's even more expensive. It's 589. Let's just do the simple math. Um, let's run it off to $600, right, a day. If we multiply 600 by 30, that is $18,000. You can even get a mortgage with a fraction of that cost. So what are we waiting for, right? You can house people and give them the supports that they need to maintain their housing with a fraction of that amount. So here are some of the key findings from the report.
I really appreciate you sharing those with us. Thank you.
You're
What
welcome.
are some calls of action that End Homelessness Winnipeg is moving toward?
Yeah, one, it's Another major contributor to housing loss, it's income. We realized from our survey that over 60% of the survey respondents were on EIA. However, how much they were receiving from EIA was not enough to be able to get a place. So we call on the provincial government to increase the EIA amount and then tie that to the rising cost of living, because if they increase it and it doesn't keep up with the rising cost of living, over time, the money won't be enough and people will lose their housing again. There are also barriers to accessing EIA. Our survey respondents said that even transportation to EIA offices was an issue. There were people who felt discriminated against by EIA staff. So these are things that the government has to work on. The second thing is prevention is very important. There's this popular saying that prevention is always better than cure. It is way better to prevent people from experiencing homelessness than to wait for them to experience it and then try to get them out of the situation. So to be able to prevent homelessness, we need to stop the flows from the three government institutions, hospitals, corrections, and CFS. And another recommendation is for Winnipeg, we are in a dire situation when it comes to housing. We don't have enough housing units. When you look at the number of people looking for affordable housing and the number of affordable housing units available, there's a big gap. So we need to really boost housing supply in the city.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. Um, how can our audience, anyone listening, also help working towards ending homelessness?
One will be the report. The final report is publicly available on our website. So I encourage people to visit our website and read the report for themselves so they get a better understanding of the situation. It would also help clear misconceptions about homelessness, that people who even blame our brothers and sisters for experiencing homelessness, but for some people, it wasn't their fault. For instance, someone could be experiencing mental health issues, and because of that, they will not be able to keep their job. If they don't keep their job, they can be kicked out of their house or their apartment and end up experiencing homelessness. Another thing is we should also be voting for politicians who care about addressing the housing crisis. So yeah, these are some ways that the general audience can also contribute to addressing the situation.
Elijah, is there anything else that you wanted to share today?
I want to say thank you for your time, and let's all promote the report. And as a society, let's work together towards addressing homelessness.
I really appreciate what you do and for shedding a light again on this. We're going to let all our listeners know and just, appreciate what you guys do.
Thank you for having me, Sylvia.